Oh, your helmet is so big.
Lord helmet, what? You need it on the bridge, sir.
Knock on my door! Knock next time!
Yes, sir.
Did you see anything?
No, sir. I didn't see you playing with your dolls again.
Good!
Growing up in the early 2000s was an experience. A strange one at that, too. Within a few short years, everyone was dressed like Guy Fieri. There was purple ketchup for some reason. And Michael Jackson's credit score went up. It was just a crazy time to be alive. And I think a big part of that is because of the games we got to play. The end of the 5th generation consoles and the 6th generation gave us some of the greatest games of all time. And I will forever cherish my Nintendo 64 and my PlayStation 2. However, this was still a very transformative time in gaming. In fact, most game series in the early 2000s hadn't even been full 3D titles for very long. For every Metal Gear, Halo, or game that pushed the envelope in terms of story, graphics, and gameplay, there were games like Sonic 06 or the metric buttload of movie tie-in games to remind people that even in the Gilded Age, there are still some dark spots. What I'm trying to say is that not everyone had it dialed in back then, and there's tons of games from the end of the 5th gen and the 6th gen that have aged very poorly. Yet there's something charming about that era of games. The simplicity, the innocence, and perhaps the overwhelming nostalgia make us all look back and go, wow, some of these games kinda suck. And we love how much it sucks. I'm sure there's a series or a game from the past that we can all admit isn't the greatest, but somehow it's just one of your favorites. And for me, that's the Army Men series. More specifically for this video, it's Army Men Sarge's Heroes for the Nintendo 64. While I was recording footage for this game, I played it through to the end, and I can tell you straight up, it has not aged very well, but for the sake of entertainment, I slogged through it for you guys. So here's my review of Army Men Sarge's Heroes.
My God, that's greasy. Sometimes life is greasy, Bubbles.
The Army Men series was developed by the 3DO Company, a company that was founded in the 90s to make video game hardware that would compete with the likes of Nintendo and Sega during the second console war. After their 3DO console failed to meet sales expectations, mainly because of an insanely high retail price and lack of quality games, 3DO moved on to just raw game development, foreshadowing what would happen to Sega just a few more years later. 3DO did have other games of varying levels of success and popularity, but in my opinion, they are most known for the Army Men series, a collection of games about plastic army men spanning a couple different genres, including strategy, third-person shooters, and even an RTS base builder. Sarge's Heroes would be the first time that a console audience got a taste of real plastic combat in a fun third-person shooter. The initial release date for Army Men Sarge's Heroes on the Nintendo 64 was September 30th, 1999. The PlayStation version was released on February 23rd, 2000, and the Dreamcast version on October 31st, 2000. Now I have to bring up the other versions because, unlike today when you buy a game on PS5 or Xbox, it actually mattered, and Army Men Sarge's Heroes is the perfect example of this. All versions of the game vary in quality and content. For the sake of the review, I played the N64 version, which I would argue is the best version, but I use that term lightly. To sum it up, the N64 has okay graphics, but a better draw distance. The Dreamcast has updated visuals, but audio and music are a little worse in my opinion. The PS1 version has by far the worst visuals and awful draw distance, which is common on PS1 games, but it also features drivable tanks, which are not available in the other versions, and also has full motion video cutscenes, which arguably make it worth it to slog through just to see the cheesy but entertaining story. A very mixed bag here. A mediocre mixed bag is kind of what made this series what it is. But if there's one thing 3DO did do right, it's just how much fun and entertainment you get out of their characters. The game takes place in a fictional world of plastic army men. Good versus evil, green versus tan. And spearheading the Green Army are a band of plucky ragtag heroes known as the Bravo Company. Leading the Bravo Company is our protagonist and hero Sergeant Hawk, or Sarge for most cases, voiced by the very talented Jim Cummings. The rest of the cast consists of the commanding officer, Colonel Grimm, the bazooka bluesman Riff, your Brooklyn accented flamethrower Scorch, the average IQ Marine machine gunner Thick.
Oh, yeah, because I remember the... Okay, tan is bad, but green's good.
Cool surfing motorman Shrap, and the coward minesweeper Hoover. And yes, Jim Cummings does voice some of these characters as well. And of course, we have the most evil, diabolical villain in all of Toy World, General Plastro, who is also voiced by Jim Cummings. Basically, this game is a war crime simulator featuring the 100 Acre Woods gang.
Oh, mother.
Our story begins with a surprise attack from the Tan Army on the Green Army base. Sarge is tasked with escorting Colonel Grimm to his helicopter to figure out what the heck is going on. In their escape, they spot a blue tank. They assume this blue spy is intel they need, so Sarge goes running after him. Sarge ends up chasing the blue spy through a strange device, and it transports him into another world, right into something no Discord mod has ever had.
We're in Kansas anymore.
The Green Nation discovers that the Tans have opened a portal to the real world, and instead of fighting their war in forests and bunkers with sandbags, they're now fighting in bathrooms and kitchens and everyday household areas. In the process of entering this world, the Tans have also acquired weapons of mass destruction, like magnifying glasses for melting soldiers. Sarge's new objective is to rescue the scattered Bravo teammates, destroy the Tan portals, and rescue the now captured Vicky. Since Sarge is the biggest simp this side of a Toys R Us, he goes portal hopping through portal after portal just for a taste of some green plastic pussy. Sarge eventually catches up to Plastro in an attempt to save Vicky, battling his way across kitchen countertops, which eventually leads him to the living room where the final confrontation begins. That's really all there is to say about the story of this game. It's short, it's sweet, and it's just full of corny moments. Nothing here is going to blow your socks off, but it is extremely charming, and although this isn't a Ubisoft quadruple A game, to me and a lot of other people growing up, this really felt like quality, and I do think it's worth giving the cutscenes a watch through. At least if you want to get the Army Men Sarge's Heroes experience without actually having to play the game, because it's a little rough. Army Men Sarge's Heroes is a third-person shooter with action and climbing segments. The game's main design took inspiration from Super Mario 64, with its open-ended level design, at least for the time, and the platforming and verticality from the PS1-era Tomb Raiders. And I would like to argue that Sarge's Heroes level design is probably its strongest attribute, at least gameplay-wise, and at least only for the big world levels. For a Nintendo 64, there's a surprising amount of detail in what they were able to pack in. Most levels feature branching paths for exploration and alternative routes. The plastic soldiers look like they should, and 3DO did a great job of nailing down the miniature scale. The kitchen and living room levels stand out to me as highlights, with the full kitchen on display with minimal fog or rendering, and the living room level really enforcing the idea of multiple routes and playing with that verticality. Plus, climbing all over the Christmas gifts under the tree is kinda cool. This is where the glaze train stops, however, because everything else I'm going to talk about here is either mid at best or really bad. This game is very hard and unforgiving for multiple reasons. One of the biggest is its control scheme. Sarge's Heroes uses tank controls, which means all movement, forwards, backwards, turning left and right, is done with one analog stick. If there's an enemy behind you, you have to stop in your tracks and slowly turn all the way around to face the enemy. I will say that I grew up in an era of tank controls, so I'm used to it. And Sarge's Heroes certainly isn't the most offensive use of tank controls I've ever seen, but coming back to this game after playing any modern game is always jarring. The camera is locked in place behind Sarge, meaning anytime you're slowly turning, so is the camera. And since you can't turn quickly and see where enemies are, you will often take damage as you awkwardly turn before you can even get a shot off. You do have the option to aim in first person for more precise shots by pressing the R button, but you are locked in place and cannot move while shooting. There's no cover system in this game, and you flinch when you get hit. Also, the auto-aim feature for run and gun gameplay works when it wants to, so a lot of times you just end up in really clunky, awkward moments of combat. The auto-aim is a shot in the dark, whether or not your bullets connect. Sometimes you'll hit everyone like an MLG Pro, or quite literally, you could not hit the broadside of a barn. There seems to be a random spread regardless if you're standing, running, crouched, or prone. It's just random.
Sometimes may be good, sometimes may be shit.
Unfortunately, you will have to rely on the shifty auto-aim, as enemies like to spawn randomly once you walk past a certain trigger. I'll give the game credit for having a mini-map that shows enemy positions, but it doesn't show enemies that haven't spawned, so a lot of times you get caught with your pants down, and a lot of times those enemies can one-shot you. Every enemy in the game is essentially tied to what you would find in a bucket of army men: riflemen, machine gunners, tanks, helicopters, and the Geneva Convention breaking flamethrower. Sarge also has access to all the weapon types in-game, however, it doesn't really matter much. The most common enemy that you will fight is the standard tan soldier with an M16. And your M16 can kill these grunts in one shot. Sometimes more, but a lot of times just one. So while it's fun to explore levels for finger quote better weapons, a majority of the levels can be completed with just the standard rifle, and maybe a grenade launcher or a bazooka for tanks. To top it all off, this is a game before autosave checkpoints. If you die, you go back to the start of the level, and some levels here have a decent amount of challenge and length. Some may argue that's what makes games like this so much fun, its difficulty. I mean, after all, the Green Army is a lean, mean fighting machine and asks the player for total military perfection. Got a bazooka to the face? Too bad, start again, soldier. Accidentally fell into Belle Delphine's bathwater? Suck it up, private, back to the start. Late stage hyper-capitalism crushing you from the inside and outside? Well, get a third job, maggot. That avocado toast was expensive, and we got a mortgage to pay.
Because I am hard, you will not like me. But the more you hate me, the more you will learn. I am hard, but I am fair. And my orders are to weed out all non-hackers who do not pack the gear to serve in my beloved corps. Do you maggots understand that? Sir, yes, sir. Bullshit, I can't hear you. Sir, yes, sir.
All jokes aside, a healthy challenge is good, but there's just some quality of life improvements that games have made over the years, and Sarge's Heroes is a product of its time. This is a game that's always been fun for me to return to, but after some extended playtime, I can confidently say that it has aged very poorly. Whenever I make game reviews, I try my best to provide a unique perspective and an opinion that's wholly mine and is genuinely adding to the conversation at hand. The Army Men series is kind of a strange topic, and there's only so many voices talking about this series. Mainly people talking about the financial failure of 3DO and Army Men on the whole. I want to add why I think these games, including Army Men Sarge's Heroes, failed to meet gamers' expectations, and/or sales expectations. Yet, a lot of these Army Men games, including this one, are so fondly loved and remembered. I think the Army Men series, and more specifically for this video, Army Men Sarge's Heroes, is stuck in a time paradox.
Huh?
What I'm trying to say is that there's a lot of design choices in this game that made the game feel dated when it launched, and also kind of ahead of its time. For example, we have to give the game credit for being an ambitious third-person shooter that's really no worse than any other third-person shooter on the market at the time. It was kind of a new idea. However, an example of this game being stuck in the past is that the controls, like previously mentioned, are not that great. It uses tank controls, which, when this game released, was fine, but very shortly after this game came out, we started to move towards twin-stick shooting, or twin-stick controls. One for movement, one for camera. So, it got dated very fast. Another good example was the split-screen multiplayer, which was very of the time. Now, by no means was it the greatest of all time, but it was still a fun mode for about an hour or two with friends with some Kool-Aid and some frozen pizza, which is kind of what couch multiplayer is all about. However, the frame rate for this game is all over the place. There is no consistency whatsoever, which, yeah, that was sort of a thing for some early big 3D games, but remember, this is right before the 6th generation console of gaming, which, sure, they've also aged, but frame rates, although low by today's standards, were smooth and consistent. In my opinion, the marketing for this series was ahead of its time too. I'd say by at least 5 or 6 years. Punchy, edgy, early Newgrounds type of energy. Just check out the commercial for this game.
Nutcracker.
Introducing Army Men Sarge's Heroes, rated T for teen. The biggest little war there is for the PlayStation game console and Nintendo 64. Army Men Sarge's Heroes, real combat, plastic men.
When you boil it all down, it's a very mixed bag. One step forward, one step back, and arguably one step to the left. I mean, there's lots of design choices that made this game feel dated when it launched, and also ahead of its time. But in less than 3 years, you have games coming out that not only define the third-person genre, but also gaming in general, with releases like Max Payne and its addicting bullet-time third-person shooting, and GTA 3 being an open-ended third-person game. Now, you might be saying that's not a fair comparison, and you're right, it's not, and that's my point. There's no way any gamer, regardless of how good your ads are or where you heard about the game, in less than 2 years, no one is choosing this game over anything else in store shelves, especially when they're pumping them out yearly, which was a massive issue for the series. Yes, there is some strange choices here. Arguably the strangest, though, is Vicky. Now, I left her out of the roll call earlier because, well, she kind of deserves her own segment. Now, when I said the game took inspiration from Mario 64 and Tomb Raider, I was referring to the gameplay, but it's pretty clear why she was added. because she's an independent female journalist reporting on the war, and unbiased media has never been more important. Also tits. I'm not really sure what the devs were thinking on this one, because like, yeah, we got army stuff and guns, and all we need now is an over-sexualized Barbie doll that's also a plastic army man with green hair?
Yeah, a little creepy.
But even with all the game's problems, it still has a very soft spot in my heart, and I think that's because it's just so charming. Now, I've already talked about the cutscenes, and they are great, but just the overall world and lore. It's cute, even if these toys are committing war crimes. The combat isn't great, the platforming is surprisingly okay, and the level design is good. Army Men Sarge's Heroes is dated. It was also right where it needed to be, and it also took a few steps forward. The music in-game is nothing you're going to add to your ADHD random Spotify playlist like with the rest of your Nintendo music, but it does its job as you strain your eyes at the randomness of pre-2001 programming. Frames will skip and jump around as you do your best to dodge incoming fire with tank controls. All the whilst you cower behind bottles of shampoo wondering why the Tan Army is interested in that weird, buzzing pink rocket Mommy keeps in the bathtub. To sum it up, this is a game that means a lot to me and so many others. It's just a fun and silly world to be in, and I do have a lot of cozy memories with this game. And it seems that everyone else who played this as a kid feels the same way. It's one of those games that I used to play a lot with my dad, and those are memories that I'll always cherish, even if a lot of the time playing was watching him restart a level over and over again because this game was so hard. I fell in love with the characters, and even though it's a game with perhaps some disturbing imagery, if you asked 10-year-old me, it was always going to make my top 10 list. It's charming to the core, it reminds me of my dad, and just simpler times. It may have been a low-rent B title about a little world full of green men, but to me, it was my entire world. So much so that the first fanfic I ever wrote, and I haven't written many, when I was a kid, I wrote a fanfic about Sarge and the Bravo Company heroes. I wrote a fanfic of plastic army men as a kid over Star Wars, and we all know how obsessed I am with that. That says something.
Idiot! Oh, what a loser!
Lastly, before I go, I would like to say that I think of all the games to ever get a remaster, I think these ones deserve it. Honestly, I would take even just like a port collection of them all, but I feel like enough time has passed, and I feel like there's a decent amount of support for it. Updated graphics, controls, hell, maybe even play more into like the 1940s, 1960s American militarism. It's actually one of my favorite themes in these games. It's pretty funny. Leave a comment down below what you think of the Army Men Sarge's Heroes series, or the series in general, and let me know what you'd like to see in a reboot or a remake. If older, obscure games like The Thing can be remade, then there's a hope for games like this. Thanks for watching, everyone. Make sure to like, leave a comment, share, and subscribe for more. And starting tonight, I'll be live every day in October playing spooky games on YouTube and Twitch, so pop in and say hi. Until next time, soldier, I'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye.